The first net rankings have been revealed for the 2025-26 college basketball season, and if you're a Duke Blue Devil fan, you're going to like where our Duke Blue Devils are slotted in, and we got to break it all down. What's up, guys? I'm Matt Long. Welcome to Duke Basketball 365. If you're a Duke Blue Devil fan, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out a ton. But getting into the news for today, coming from CBS Sports, the first official release of the 2025-26 men's college basketball net ranking, a ranking system utilized as a sorting tool for NCAA tournament selection committee that factors in winning percentage, game results, strength of schedule, game location, wins and losses quality, and team efficiency, debuted Monday with Michigan at number 1 and Duke at number 2. The release was good news in particular for the Big Ten, which had 6 teams inside the top 20, including Purdue at number 3 and one of the Duke Blue Devils' next opponents, Michigan State, at number 10. Now, currently we are looking at what is on the screen is the net rankings in the first iteration of the 2025-2026 net college basketball rankings. What the net rankings are computer metrics to determine who the best team in the country is. That's pretty much what it is. So it's off of formulas and off of mathematical statistics. It's not off of eye test, which is what a lot of the AP poll is. If we look at currently where Duke is ranked AP poll wise, we are ranked number 4, but looking at formulaic things and not just looking at the eye test, the formulas suggest that Duke is better than that number 4 ranking given out by the AP poll. So there are a couple more things that I have to explain in this graphic before we can keep going, but wins above bubble, which is what Michigan is really beating Duke in, and what honestly 3 of the top 4 people are beating Duke in, is pretty much how much better is your team over a theoretical, I don't even know if that deserves quotations or not, but over a theoretical team 45 in this mathematical formula. So whatever, however good team 45 is, they would expect your team is X amount of wins better than that. And Duke has been assigned 1.58 wins better than the 45th team in the whole system. So remember, Team 45 isn't an actual team. It's not whoever, theoretically, if you are the net ranked 45 team, you should be there, but it's more of an average of all the ratings, the average where that 45 would slip in, not that actual 45th team. And the second metric that we got to talk about here is Q1 all the way on the right. Q1 stands for quadrant 1. And if we want to explain exactly what a quadrant 1 win is here, we can see that pretty much the Q in Q1 stands for quadrant, and there is Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. And pretty much it is how quality is that game. So quadrant 1 is a home game versus a team that is net ranked in the top 30 at a neutral site versus a team net ranked in the top 50, or an away game, a true road game versus a team that is net ranked in the top 75. That is what a quadrant 1 victory is. The quadrants, they don't come into effect as much for a team like Duke in the ACC or a team playing in a Power 5 conference. It's usually for teams that either have weaker schedules or they're playing in weaker conferences to give the bracket makers, to give them a better sense of how strong a conference is. So if you look at like any given year, the Mountain West, you can see as a whole, maybe they performed favorably in Q1 wins or Q2 wins, and they were better than a different mid-major conference. So you can figure out how strong conferences are. So the quadrant 1 conversation isn't going to be factored in as much for Duke as it would be for lower teams. I'm not saying ignore it, but that doesn't matter as much. So Duke currently ranked number 2 behind the Michigan Wolverines. What Michigan has done so far has been extremely concerning. They beat Gonzaga, who is currently the 5th ranked team in the net. They beat Gonzaga by 40 points in the championship game of whatever tournament they were in. They beat them 101-61. That is terrifying. They got a big time transfer from UCLA. Michigan is going to be one of the top teams to beat this year in college basketball, and they're already coming off of a Big Ten championship last season and won some games in the March Madness tournament. That's going to be a terrifying team. that we have to face them in the NCAA tournament, that's going to be a fantastic team. But the other teams joining Duke in the top 5 of the net rankings, Vanderbilt, who, great year for Vanderbilt athletics between basketball and football, and Purdue, currently the number 1 ranked team in the country. Of course, Purdue, as you may expect, they're going to be ranked very high in the net. They're a fantastic team. But one thing to be pointed out, doesn't really matter how highly you are ranked right now. You just want to see Duke be ranked higher in the actual net rankings than we are in the AP poll, because right now those net rankings can give you a better feel for how good your team actually is, because right now the AP voters they've only had 7 or 8 games to determine how good or bad these basketball teams are. So Duke, so the numbers suggest we're better than 4, but it's still too early to give the AP voters a perfect idea of how good or bad those teams are. Before we get to just the next part of this video, got to give a shout out to Cam Boozer, who had a ton of points. Actually, it got cut off 35 points versus the Arkansas Razorbacks. Pretty much a couple days after I made a video about how he was only going off against the bad teams and not playing well against Texas and Kansas, but absolutely shut me up. That was awesome to see from Cameron Boozer. The guy's going to be an absolute superstar. He looked absolutely unstoppable against Coach Calipari's Razorbacks. That was an extremely, extremely impressive game, especially how when we were down in the second half, in the final 10 minutes of the game, Cam Boozer absolutely took over against Arkansas. That was great to see. It looks like we got a star on our hands, and that's going to matter because this tough non-conference schedule continuing tomorrow night against Alex Condon and the defending national champion Florida Gators, currently ranked 15. They already have 2 losses. They lost to the TCU, and then they lost their opening game to a team that I'm blanking on, but Arizona. So they lost to number 2 and then lost to TCU. So one of those losses were very, very high quality, but Florida isn't as good as we were expecting them to be coming into the season. Florida at Cameron Indoor was the most expensive non-conference game get-in price of the entire non-conference schedule across the landscape of college basketball going into the season. We'll see if that price has changed, but the hype is still immense for this game, but it's not going to be as difficult of a game as initially projected for the Blue Devils. They're hurting by losing Walter Clayton Jr. to the first round of the NFL draft, or the NBA draft. They lost some other guys to the transfer portal and the draft, and they're still a very strong team, but they aren't as strong as the Florida Gators, who won the national championship last season. But Jon Scheyer not letting these guys rest. It's going to be Florida, and then the next game is going to be versus Michigan State. Tom Izzo always has the Spartans ready to fight. They always have a fantastic defense, and they brought back, they lost their best point guard to the NBA, but Michigan State still brought back their best big man. They still brought back a ton of production from last season, and the Spartans are always a tough team. I still feel like, I know we eliminated them with Paulo Banchero back in 2022, and the most recent matchup between Duke and the Michigan State Spartans in November of 2023. We were victorious on both of those accounts, but I still feel like we haven't properly gotten revenge for them eliminating RJ and Zion from March Madness back in, I think that was 2019 is what year that was, but still don't feel like we've gotten enough revenge on Tom Izzo and the Spartans. That's going to be an insane game, and then after this game, it's going to be Lipscomb, and then it's right back to ranked teams with JT Toppin's Texas Tech Red Raiders. This schedule is really, really tough, which is exactly what Jon Scheyer should have done. Make sure that our guys are going to be as tested as we possibly can be when going into when the games really matter, which is going to be that ACC schedule. First step is going to be ACC championship before moving on to March Madness and all that other good stuff later on into the season. But hey, so far, still 8-0, season's still young. This team is getting better each and every week, which is something you would expect to see from a team with starting multiple true freshmen, but something you love to see and you never take for granted, even if it happens every single year with the Duke Blue Devils. I'm very excited for what this team is going to accomplish this season and can't wait to watch it all go down. But that's what I got for this video. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate you taking the time to watch it all the way through. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and go Duke.